My family moved a lot. Now I know what we were running from. At first I thought it was fun. We lived in an RV. It was like an endless vacation. One week we were in LA, the next we were in Salt Lake City. We didn't know much about our lives before this. We knew we were born in Portland and that we could never stop moving. We always knew we were a special family. I just guess we didn't know how special we were. My parents tried so hard to have kids and almost lost hope. That's why my twin sister and I were so special to them. They're little miracles. It was annoying, but at least we knew we meant something to them. Amelia and I were fairly close as far as siblings go. We were kind of each other's only friends since we were homeschooled. We felt pretty isolated. We never set up camp anywhere fun. No KOA campgrounds with ice cream shops and swimming pools, always driving off-road and living deep in the woods. I guess it was peaceful, in a way, but anyone who grew up near the woods understand it's not something you mess with. The first time I really personally realized something was up was just before our 7th birthday, when we were staying in a place in BC called Kamloops. We weren't supposed to sneak out or leave mom and dad's sight, but at the time, we were mischievous 6-year-olds with a huge, unexplored forest in front of us. What do you expect? We waited until they fell asleep for the night and snuck out of the RV through the window, which was easy because the window was just a sheet of plastic held together by a zipper, and we set off with nothing but a shitty lantern to illuminate the path in front of us. It wasn't long before we saw something strange, a glow. Not from our lantern. It was coming from in front of us. It didn't take long for us to see who or what was in front of us. It was a lady holding a small, homemade torch, but she didn't look much like a lady. Her hair was matted and fallen out in some places. Her skin was almost blue and looked rotted. Her teeth were yellow and a few were missing, and I thought you could even see part of her jaw. She was wearing a dirty hospital gown. I didn't know where the nearest hospital was, but it had to be pretty damn far because the last time I remember driving anywhere with a paved road had to be 3 hours before we set up our camp here. Amelia and I were frozen in fear, and for the first time since we had mutually decided affection towards siblings was lame, I reached for her hand. That thing reached out its bony arm to us. It moaned something almost indecipherable, like Mobaboo. That was enough to snap me out of it, and I sprinted away, dragging Amelia behind me. By some miracle, we had made it back to the RV, and by some other miracle, got back in without waking our parents. We didn't get much sleep, and were far too shaken up to even say good morning to our parents, let alone tell them what happened. Would they have even believed us if we told them? Well, after what happened next, I guess they would have to. When we opened the door to the RV, we saw that the remains of what we had left out overnight, a campfire reduced to ashes, the sticks covered in charcoal Amelia and I had used to draw on the rocks, and a makeshift table with a few cans of beans, had been utterly destroyed. It wasn't too out of the ordinary to have our camp ravished by animals. We lived in the woods after all, but this was something no animal could do. This looked set up like whatever did it had a plan. What we saw written on the back of the RV confirmed this belief. In the charcoal sticks, someone had written, "You can't run forever on our trailer." Mom made us breakfast while Dad cleaned up the mess. We left shortly after that and drove for hours, not even stopping for quick washroom breaks. Mom and Dad spoke in hushed whispers as Dad drove. I wish I knew what they had been talking about. That night, I guess because Mom and Dad could see we were shaken up, they took us for a rare treat. A dinner at a real restaurant. A shitty diner, but a restaurant nonetheless. It was empty there, which was why my parents liked it, as they hated crowds. I was over the moon. A root beer float and a greasy cheeseburger was anything a 6-year-old boy could dream of. Which was why I was so upset when Mom and Dad made us leave the second someone else came in. It was just an old trucker. I didn't get the big deal. While we were in the RV, Amelia asked why we had to leave while I sulked in my bunk, a glorified shelf. Mom sighed. "I suppose you two are almost 7. That's old enough to know." "Well, Zachary, Amelia, the reason we had to leave is because we're scared of losing you. Do you remember what happened when you were 4? I had no idea. My memory was never good, but Amelia claimed to remember. We were in Beaverton, not too far from Portland. She said that when we were 4, we were running around in a field when a big man in camouflage and bit boots came up to us and bent down to our level. We're not supposed to talk to strangers. Amelia said. She was always a goody two-shoes. I'm John. Now we're not strangers. What are your names? I'm Zach, and that's my sister Amelia. We're 4 and our birthday is July 26th, 2002. I had apparently said, but I bet Amelia just said I said that to make me look worse. That's when he stopped smiling. He roughly took our hands and started to lead us away. Let's go somewhere fun, Zach and Amelia. I need to take you someplace else. My mom got teary. That's right. If your dad and I hadn't caught you just before you left, we probably would have never seen you again. I took you to someplace safe, and your dad, well, your dad dashed. I shot that son of a bitch. In the leg. Hope he had fun crawling back to his house. He said coldly. Amelia and I shot each other glances. Okay, Daddy, I'm gonna go to sleep now, she said, climbing over me to get to her bunk. That night we stopped somewhere for the night. I forgot where, probably near the interior of BC, or maybe Alberta. I looked out the little plastic window, and I saw her. I saw that fucking lady again. She was staring at me and Amelia in our bunk beds, reaching out for us with that same long, bony hand. I rolled over and tried to sleep, but couldn't, knowing she was there. Life continued on like that for a while. Anywhere we'd stop, she'd be there. Washington? There she was. Nevada? You bet your ass. Montana? Better fucking believe it. Amelia and I didn't really explore much anymore. Partially because we were getting older and gradually showing less interest in that sort of thing, but partially because that experience in Kamloops traumatized us both. That didn't stop the lady from trying to get us. Sometimes we'd catch a glimpse of her on the highway as we drove by. Sometimes she'd appear right where the fire of our campsite stopped illuminating, so we could barely see her. On the rare occasion we went into public to get supplies or food, I could have sworn I caught a glimpse of her in the crowd. Whenever she was around, I always heard that damn cry of hers. Mo boo boo. After a while, she stopped scaring me. Well, as much. Everything finally made sense. The day before Amelia and I turned 14. Mom and Dad had left the RV and gave us two a rare couple hours of freedom as they gathered things for our birthday. We weren't parked ridiculously far from civilization, but I'd say a good hour's worth of walking. We weren't that scared. We had lived in the woods long enough to know as long as you didn't bother the forest, it wouldn't bother you, and the lady in the hospital gown was honestly more of an annoyance than anything else. I'd even go so far to say we had almost forgotten about her. I was reading, and Amelia was rummaging around the RV for food. I was getting immersed in my book when Amelia shouted out, "Zach, come check this out." I rolled my eyes. What could it be? We had lived in this tiny RV for almost 14 years. I knew it like the back of my hand. There was absolutely no nook or cranny I didn't know about. Oh, I guess I was wrong. There, under the driver's seat cushion Amelia had pulled out for some reason, was a box. It was small and a bit squished from all the years of my dad's ass sitting on it, but we could still tell what it was. Amelia excitedly reached to open it. Inside were papers. "Forget about it, Amelia. It's probably just boring documents for work," I said, but the look of confusion to horror on my sister's face was enough to change my mind. They were documents, but not for work. Birth documents. For us. But the stated parents weren't ours. I was apparently Zachary Jr., but nobody in my family was named Zachary. I looked at the father's name, Zachary. The mother was someone named Emily. Maybe we were adopted? I suggested. Amelia reached in and pulled out another sheet of paper. She shook her head and held out the next one for me with a shaky hand. Infants missing from Portland Hospital, July 27th, 2002. Twins, Zachary Christopher Clark Jr. and Amelia Emily Clark. Ongoing search. Anyone with information is to report it to the police immediately. Clark? Christopher? Those weren't our names. Our last name was Brown, and our parents certainly weren't Zachary and Emily. They were Jenny and Kevin. I had a feeling things were going to get worse. I was right, as Amelia pulled out the third and second to last paper. Portland mother of two murdered in hospital. Emily Clark, 27, had recently given birth to twins, now missing, when she was smothered to death in her own hospital bed. Police drawing of suspects. We looked at the police drawing. It was obviously not a complete match, but they were basically the only other two faces we had seen our entire lives. Mom and Dad. CCTV footage shows the two suspects leaving the hospital through a back door with the two infants. Search is ongoing. If spotted, do not approach these individuals. Alert the authorities immediately. We were silent as Amelia shakily grabbed the last piece of paper. This was from 2006. We were 4. After an Oregon man allegedly spotted the missing kids and was attacked by the perpetrators, a glimpse of hope is seen in this 4-year-long cold case. Father and husband of the victims, Zachary Clark, shares this message. "To my babies, I have no idea where you two are, but I will never let go of hope that one day I will see your beautiful faces again. You may not even know who I am, but that doesn't change anything. Until we meet again, Daddy loves you." We couldn't even say anything. What do you even say to that? We just stood in silence for a while. Then, we heard a banging on the RV. We jumped and looked outside. It was the lady in the hospital gown, closer than ever. We could see her bluish-gray skin. We could see her hazel eyes. They kind of looked like Amelia's. "Muff bo 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 bo," she moaned, reaching out for us again. I looked down to the newspaper clipping. It had a picture of the victim on it. I held it up to the window, where she was staring at us. "Moo," she said again. But, my baby." All this time, she had just wanted her babies. Amelia stepped out of the RV. I was scared at first, but this day couldn't get any crazier, so I followed. "Mama?" she asked, tears in her eyes. "Boboa," she said, reaching her bony hand out once again, but she didn't run. She let her touch her face, as she gently rubbed her hand across her cheek. She did the same to me, but then pointed in the direction of the nearest town. "Giuescu," she said. "Go?" "Why?" Amelia asked. "Did our mother croaked?" Dad, Zachary Sr., was he still alive? After all this time? We have 2 hours until Mom and Dad. Amelia cut herself off. They get back. Let's go. Quick. Although we really didn't have any idea how to get to the town, we somehow knew. Like someone was guiding us. We busted into sheriff's office, probably looking awful. First came the questioning, then the DNA testing. Then they looked for our parents. Then they arrested my parents. Then the news stories. And the interviews. Then we were flown out in a plane, my first plane ever, to Portland. To meet our dad. We were quite the story. They called my parents the wretches of the woods. They thought of them as evil witches who stole us and hid us deep in the woods. I guess they were right in a way. It was weird seeing them behind bars, serving life sentences, because after all, they raised us for nearly 14 years. But that's where they'll stay. No running, no hiding. There's nowhere to hide in a cell. He burst into tears when he saw us. We didn't. It was weird. He was my dad, and all, but was he? I mean, I guess I met him when I was like a few hours old, but I just couldn't connect to him. It took a while, but we slowly got used to our new lives in a house with a bed and our own rooms. Not running from everything or living in the woods. It was peaceful. Although most of the time, I ended up sneaking into Amelia's room because after all this time, I still couldn't be alone. One time, I got a knock on our window. We both woke up and saw the lady in the hospital gown outside. But she looked happier, less rotten. Like she was complete again. Mama, I asked, could she stay? And I could live with the family I craved? Like she read my mind. She shook her head. I have to go. My babies, she said, reaching her hand out to us through the window as she slowly disappeared into the night. We never saw her again after that. But we always knew she was watching us. But this time, we wouldn't run.